over the last few years, you've seen Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin and cryptos rocket. We've had this debate loads of times about where we are after post-global financial crisis. Is the fact that the gold price hasn't performed to the extent that perhaps we all expected it to do part of the reason why we're even having this kind of conversation now? And the next part of that question is, what is it about gold that has stopped it performing?
I mean, look, there's a lot in the world that's going wrong, right? I mean, you can look at, oh my God, you can look at North Korea, you can look at other geopolitical flashpoints, you can look at the fact that people like Professor Kevin Dowd in the UK and Professor Hans van Zin in Germany and Larry Summers in the US, very prominent voices, have come out in recent months saying, guys, the banking system hasn't still deleveraged. What are we doing here? We had nearly a decade of zero interest rates, and we have all the same problems with the banks that we did back then. But now we're raising interest rates, and we're just going to lead into another financial crisis. And there are all these concerns out there, but okay, fine, there are all those concerns out there, and yet, look at stock market valuations. They're high. Look at risky asset valuations generally. They're high. Property asset valuations, they're high. For whatever reason, notwithstanding what are some legitimate concerns that I share with a lot of people, people have nevertheless been willing to bid up the value of financial assets. And if you're willing to bid up the value of financial assets, what are you in effect doing? You're in effect accepting a lower risk premium. You're basically saying that this long stream of cash flows to be generated by a piece of property or corporate profits through share dividends or bond coupons, which may be close to zero, but hey, whatever. You're basically saying that you're willing to accept maybe an awful lot of risk, but for very low return for holding those things. And okay, fine, we can argue about whether or not that's rational all day long, but it is what it is. And one of the reasons why gold has not risen as much as it has in recent years, notwithstanding further money printing, prolonged zero rates, etc., is because people have, for whatever rational or irrational reason, they've been willing to accept ever-shrinking risk premia for financial assets. Now, as an economic historian, I can tell you that this happens once in a while, and it usually ends in tears, but no one can time it precisely.
But then Bitcoin comes along, and that price starts soaring.
Yes.
So it's not just about the financial assets as being the alternative to gold.
True. I'm talking about just the gold side.
Yeah.
And I think explaining the interest around Bitcoin is partially explained by precisely what I admire about it and what I know Adam admires about it and what a lot of people admire about it. It is elegant. The idea that you can establish proof of ownership over something through the very proof of work of the algorithm perpetuating itself, and to do so in this distributed, spontaneous way through the internet, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. I admire it for what it is. And I think that as just a marvel of technology, it attracts natural interest, and I think a lot of the interest is coming strictly from that.
Karen, the demand for gold in Turkey, is it being robust? Has it got? What's driving it there?
Yeah, so it's remained very robust.
What's the difference
between
between
the last 10, 15
the
years?
culture here and the culture there on that?
Well, culturally, it comes down to some of the things I was talking about previously. But on the demand side of things, it's varied from perhaps 50 tons to the figure that I quoted earlier, 300 tons, somewhere in between over the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of that going into the jewelry sector. Obviously for all the reasons I've previously mentioned. And it's not just Turkey in its own right, it's about what Turkey is doing with that jewelry across the region, because obviously the Middle East itself is, again, a big sink for jewelry, gold jewelry in particular. And so it's affecting that whole region. And so its impact is seen very widely. In terms of the role of gold in the economy.
That's the point I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, so the role of gold in the Turkish economy, and the Turkish Central Bank has made this clear. The Turkish government has made this clear. The Turkish Central Bank is a buyer of gold, and there's some new legislation that they've recently implemented which will ensure that the central bank gets first dibs on any gold produced from any mine in Turkey. So they become the preferential buyer of that gold. Now that's not fully implemented yet, but it is happening. So that's a very interesting sign of what a central bank thinks about gold as an asset